Hello and welcome to the Osteoarthritis Action Alliance Lunch and Learn webinar for July 17th, 2024. Thank you for joining us. Our presenter today is Dr. Richard F. Loeser. Dr. Loeser is director of the UNC Thurston Arthritis Research Center and the Joseph P. Archie Jr. Eminent Professor of Medicine in the UNC Division of Rheumatology, Allergy, and Immunology. Dr. Loeser received his medical degree from the West Virginia School of Medicine and completed residency and fellowship training in internal medicine, rheumatology, and geriatrics at the Wake Forest School of Medicine. His primary research goal is to discover the basic mechanisms relevant to joint tissue destruction in osteoarthritis. Dr. Loeser has worked in the area of clinical trials of exercise and weight loss interventions for adults with osteoarthritis of the knee and has published over 200 research articles, reviews, chapters, and editorials on osteoarthritis. He serves as co-editor of the journal Arthritis and Rheumatology and has received the Osteoarthritis Research Society International Award for Basic Research in Osteoarthritis and a Merit Award from the NIH. The title of today's presentation is Nutrition and OA. Is there a role for vitamin K? Welcome, Dr. Loeser. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for that very nice introduction, and I'm excited to tell you about the importance of vitamin K today. This is actually a topic that I've been interested in ever since I was a rheumatology fellow, over 30 years ago. And it was started by a new faculty member that joined the division at Wake Forest who was interested in vitamin K and actually was a protein biochemist. And his name was Radar Wallen, and he was a very exciting and very encouraging mentor. And we started working on a vitamin K dependent protein that I'll talk about. It's called matrix GLA protein. So using his knowledge of vitamin K and my growing knowledge in cartilage, we got this project started, and I've been working on this off and on over the years. So I want to advance my slides. Here we go. So this nice color wheel shows the various vitamins and their sources, and the fat-soluble vitamins are vitamins A, K, E, and D on the left, and the rest are water-soluble vitamins. And all of these different vitamins, as well as other nutrients, have been examined in a bunch of different studies, and I just have a small sampling on the right, and I'm not going to go through all of these. But overall, the role in OA has not been clear, particularly when looking at a single vitamin. And I'll just mention the top study, which is a vitamin D study at the very top of the slide here from Tim McAlinden in 2013. And this study looked at vitamin D supplementation and showed no benefit for progression of knee pain or cartilage volume loss in people with symptomatic OA. So there's still a lot of work going on in this area, but today I'd like to convince you that vitamin K is something we need to be paying more attention to. So vitamin K was discovered in 1929 by Henrik Dahm, and the K comes from coagulation, which is the German word for coagulation with a K. And he has his picture on a stamp there, which is what happens if you discover something really important. Just a little bit of biochemistry, and I promise there won't be much, but this is to just get you introduced into what the function of vitamin K is. So in its reduced form, shown here is KH2. It's necessary as a cofactor for an enzyme called gamma-glutamyl carboxylase. And what this enzyme does is when proteins are being synthesized, which is shown down here, there are specific proteins that require a post-translational modification where this glutamic acid residue that's just indicated by a little red thing here has to be converted to something called carboxyglutamic acid, or GLA. And for the protein to be functional, this has to occur. So what vitamin K does, the reduced vitamin K, it's a cofactor for the enzyme shown here, and it produces these GLA residues that make functional vitamin K dependent proteins. And then the vitamin K is oxidized in this reaction, and this enzyme, VCORC one reduces it back to the reduced form. And there's a vitamin K cycle then that occurs. And this enzyme is important because as I'll show you in a minute, this is the target of anticoagulants that are used to block production of coagulation proteins such as warfarin or coumadin by affecting reduction of vitamin K. So the vitamin K dependent proteins that people are most familiar with are those that are made in the liver, the coagulation factors 2, 7, 9, 10, proteins C, S, and Z. But there are a host of vitamin K dependent proteins that are found in other tissues. Bone with osteocalcin, matrix glyprotein that's found in a variety of tissues, including cartilage and bone, but also blood vessels, heart, kidney. A protein called Gas6, also found in very similar tissues, GLA-rich protein, as well as periostein. So you can see that the vitamin K dependent proteins go way beyond the coagulation factors, but these extrahepatic proteins have not received as much attention. So I showed you this diagram at the top already about the normal production of vitamin K dependent proteins requiring this active enzyme and reduced vitamin K. So in terms of joint health, you require the production of these functional proteins. Now, warfarin and other vitamin K antagonists, they interfere with this pathway by blocking the production of the reduced vitamin K. And then what you get are more uncarboxylated proteins. And this is showing uncarboxylated MGP or matrix glyprotein, which can serve as a biomarker for the activity of vitamin K. And I'll show some data on this in a minute. The loss of these functional proteins can affect the cartilage, causing increased calcification in cartilage as well as meniscus, cause the cells to enlarge. This is called chondrocyte hypertrophy, which is something that you see in osteoarthritis, reduce the survival of the cells, and also affect the underlying bone. So all of these functions that are dependent on vitamin K are blocked by warfarin, and this can result in osteoarthritis, as I'll show you. Vitamin K has also been looked at in a number of other diseases besides osteoarthritis. Osteoporosis is the second disease that seems to be important in terms of vitamin K, particularly because a number of these proteins are found in bone. But all of these other diseases are being investigated right now. We'll have to wait and see how this turns out. So getting back to OA, as I just showed you, vitamin K is much more important than just for the control of blood clotting. And the joint contains at least 6 different vitamin K dependent proteins that I've just introduced you to. And another important connection is a genetic connection. So matrix glyprotein, or MGP, has been found to have a variant or risk allele that when people have this variant, they're at higher risk of developing OA, either in the hands or in the knees. And this allele is associated with reduced production of MGP in joint tissues. So this is a genetic connection that tells you this protein is important, and if you have less of it, you are at higher risk of getting OA. Then there's some studies that I'll go over that have shown that people that have a higher intake of vitamin K or higher status based on phyloquinone or MGP, this is associated with a reduced prevalence and incidence and progression of OA. And then the other important thing to know is that vitamin K insufficiency, not having enough vitamin K for these important proteins, is occurring in about 60% or more of men and women over the age of 50 that don't meet the dietary recommendations for vitamin K. So this is an important issue, and it's really related to the poor diet of many people in the US and worldwide often. So what are the dietary sources of vitamin K? Most of the vitamin K that we consume is in this form, phyloquinone, which is vitamin K1. That's about 90% of the vitamin K from our normal diet. And this is found in green leafy vegetables. And then there's also a form of vitamin K called vitamin K2 or menaquinone. And vitamin K2, it's not as abundant as vitamin K1, but it's found in animal foods. that some are shown here, and I'll show you some levels here in a second. And there are other forms of metacquinones that are found in cheeses. And then this is a little bowl of something called natto, which is a fermented soybean that's a really high source of vitamin K. It's also important to recognize the importance of the gut microbiome. We're hearing all the time now about what the gut microbiome does and how important it is. But since vitamins are absorbed from the diet through the gut, then the absorption is really important, and it's regulated in part by our gut microbiome. The other interesting connection is that gut microbes can make a certain level of metacquinones. So you can have vitamin K being produced by gut microbes, although this is a smaller amount than what we take into our through our diet. But it shows you that a healthy gut microbiome is important for healthy aging for many reasons, not just this. So in terms of foods, the recommended daily value of vitamin K currently is 120 micrograms per day. And here's a list of foods and the percent of the recommended daily allowance. And you can see natto, these are fermented soybeans that are very popular in Japan, is a really good source of vitamin K, over 700% of the recommended daily value. And then you can see the other foods that are top on the list are green leafy vegetables like collards, turnip greens, spinach, kale, broccoli. And then you can see the content of other foods going on down the list. So these are a partial list, but some of the top foods in terms of vitamin K content. As I mentioned, this is something I've been interested in since fellowship, and then this is just a series of a few studies that I just want to point out. I'm not going to go through all the details. These just date back to more recent studies in 2010. But the top study here is one that we did with Radar Wallen, and this is one that we showed that this matrix GLA protein that I've discussed was produced at a lower level in osteoarthritic chondrocytes compared to normal chondrocytes. And then these other three studies are epidemiological studies led by Kyla Shea. And Kyla Shea started out as a postdoc with me at Wake Forest. And she was co-mentored by Steve Kraszewski, who's the second author in this paper. And she's produced some really nice epidemiological data to support an important role for vitamin K in OA. So this study showed an association between vitamin K status and knee OA features. Another study showed vitamin K status and lower extremity function in older adults using Health ABC data. And another study showing vitamin K status and mobility limitation and disability in older adults. So in terms of vitamin K status and knee OA, this is one of the studies where we are able to look at MRI features of OA, and we examined vitamin K status using this biomarker, the uncarboxylated matrix GLA protein. That's the non-functional matrix GLA protein. And looking at the quartiles of higher non-functional matrix GLA protein, you can see a relationship between osteophytes, which are the bony spurs important in OA, a trend towards cartilage damage, increase in bone marrow lesions that are seen in OA, bone subarticular cyst, meniscus damage, as well as synovitis. So several features of osteoarthritis were associated with the levels of this biomarker of vitamin K activity. This is a study from a group at Boston led by Tohina Nuiji, who's also been interested in vitamin K for several years now. And this one showed that vitamin K status here measured by the level of plasma phyloquinone, which is vitamin K1, was associated with OA in both the hands and the knees. So the hand data is shown up here and the knee data is shown down here. So significant associations between risk of hand and knee OA and vitamin K1 levels. And then another study from the Boston group looked at vitamin K status again with plasma phyloquinones, and looked for incident OA, and they used both X-rays and MRI. And here's some of the data just showing that dependent on the level of vitamin K, those that were with low levels, less than 0.5 nanomolars, were more likely to have knee OA with an odds ratio of 1.56. And they had a knee-based analysis and a person-based analysis, which were all significant. And then this is another study that was from Boston from the Tufts group, looking at vitamin K here by a dietary questionnaire. And this was from the Osteoarthritis initiative with over 1,977 participants in this study, followed for 48 months. And they found that reduced intake of vitamin K was associated with knee radiographic progression, particularly in individuals that had a baseline score of 2. So this is a moderate OA score. So I think I've shown you, I think, some pretty strong epidemiologic data that vitamin K intake is important. What about vitamin K inhibition, which is what these anticoagulants do? They're vitamin K antagonists, so they would lower the production of the functional vitamin K dependent proteins, and that's how they work as anticoagulants. There's a study, and I'll show you some data from that, using a vitamin K antagonist called acetocumarol, which is an anticoagulant used more in Europe. And it was associated with an increased risk of both incident OA as well as progression for both knee and hip, and for knee and hip separately as well. And then another study published in the same issue of Annals of Rheumatic Diseases, where warfarin use was examined, and there was a 1.59 times higher risk of either knee or hip replacement in individuals that were taking warfarin. And then another connection to warfarin use that's important in terms of skeletal development is the fetal syndrome or warfarin embryopathy that can occur in women who are exposed to warfarin during pregnancy. So this is why warfarin and anticoagulants that are in the warfarin family are not used in people that, women that may want to get pregnant or are pregnant, because of this syndrome where there's affects the growth of the nose based on the cartilage in the nose, so nasal hypoplasia that's shown here. It affects the growth plates and bone development. And here's some abnormal stippling or calcification in bones in the ankles shown here. And it can also affect the CNS and cause ocular abnormalities as well. So this shows you that vitamin K dependent proteins need to be functional, not just for coagulation, but for these other tissues. And then getting back to warfarin use and OA, this is the data from the case control study looking at warfarin use. And the data came from a UK GP medical records database. And they compared the risk of getting hip or knee replacement in adults taking either warfarin or a different class of anticoagulants called the DOACs. And so these are anticoagulants that don't have their mechanism by blocking vitamin K action. And you can see here the odds ratio for knee and hip OA was increased in those taking warfarin compared to DOACs. And what's also important is you can see that those that individuals that were on warfarin for longer period of time, from 1 year out to 4 years, were at higher risk of having either knee or hip replacement. And this is the other study looking at anticoagulants, acetocumarol in this study, showing an increased risk of both incidence and progression. Another case control study. You can see the increased odds ratio here for osteoarthritis in either hip or knee is 2.5, and the odds ratio here for knee OA is 2.34. They also, in this study, looked at genetic variants of matrix GLA protein. So if you remember early on, I said there's a variant in matrix GLA protein that is increasing the risk of OA, and then a variant in the enzyme that affects vitamin K metabolism, the VCORC1. And what they found, which was really striking, was that the individuals who are taking this anticoagulant that affects vitamin K activity, and also had these risk variants, were at a much, much higher risk of OA incidence and progression with an odds ratio of over 4. So this is pretty striking data about vitamin K being important in OA. The last bit of data that I'll talk about is the presence of a nuclear receptor that also binds vitamin K. And this receptor is called SXR in humans and PXR in mice. This receptor is found in the liver, the intestines, and in addition to binding vitamin K, it's a sensor that's involved in drug excretion. It's called a xenobiotic sensor, but it's also been shown to be present not only in liver and intestines, but also in bone cells, that's the osteoblast, and cartilage cells, that's the chondrocytes. And this receptor can regulate expression of bone proteins, and as I'll show you, has some effects on cartilage as well. So the way it was studied in cartilage was in mice that had this receptor knocked out. And what you can see when you compare the wild-type mice on the left and the knockouts on the right, and you look at their cartilage, you can see as they got older, this is the cartilage in the wild-type mice, and this is the underlying bone. The cartilage in the mice that had this receptor knocked out had thinning. And so there's cartilage loss that was occurring with the lack of this receptor. So this is just another piece of evidence that vitamin K could be important in the development of OA. So I think what I've tried to show you and convince you is that there's strong evidence that adequate vitamin K intake is important for joint health and function, that vitamin K insufficiency and vitamin K antagonists, such as warfarin, can be associated with an increased risk of OA development and progression. And really what this indicates is that a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial is really needed to see if supplementation with vitamin K would be of any benefit, whether this would reduce pain, improve function, and slow progression of OA. So we are part of a pilot study to get the initial data that would be needed to fund a much larger study. And this is being led by Sarah Booth, who's at Tufts and at the Gene Meyer Human Nutrition Research Center in Boston. And the co-investigators are shown here that include Kyla Shea. We've taken people that have knee pain and have moderate OA, this is grade 2 to 3, and importantly, they have to have a low plasma vitamin K level to enter this study. And then they're randomized to receiving either a placebo or a vitamin K supplement, and then we're following them out for 6 months. And this is just a pilot study to show that we can raise their vitamin K levels and that we can enroll people. And then we're using the matrix clot protein as a biomarker to show that the vitamin K is actually doing what it's supposed to do. So with that, I'd like to acknowledge people that were involved in this work, particularly Kyla Shea, who I've worked with for many years, Sarah Booth, who is a world expert in vitamin K and nutritional aspects of vitamin K. Natalie Alcott is a rheumatology fellow who's become interested in this and is working with me on this vitamin K trial here at UNC. And then my mentor, Radar Wallen, who really got me started in osteoarthritis research, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, but was a big influence on my career. Funding from NIAMS, so our early research was funded by NIAMS, and our current clinical trials being funded by NIAMS. And then our UNC clinical trials team, which is very important as well. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you have, and thanks for your attention.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Loeser. This has been really fascinating and some pretty striking data for sure. If you have a question for Dr. Loeser, please go ahead and type it into the chat box. It looks like we've got a couple coming in, so I'll just start with the first one. If taking vitamin K supplement, is there an ideal ratio of vitamin K1 to vitamin K2?
So thanks for the question. There's a lot of debate about vitamin K2 and whether or not it's better than vitamin K1. And basically, there's no good evidence that it is. So the supplement we're using in our study is vitamin K1 entirely. And vitamin K1, as I mentioned, is the primary source of vitamin K in our diet as well. So there's really not any data to say that there's an ideal ratio. But it is a bit controversial topic because some people are saying that vitamin K2 might be better, but there's really no evidence for that.
Okay, great. And another question, is the carboxylation pathway independent of vitamin K receptor function?
Yes, those are two completely independent mechanisms by which vitamin K might be important. So the nuclear receptor is controlling gene expression and stimulated by direct binding of vitamin K, but that's independent of vitamin K's action in terms of producing the vitamin K dependent proteins.
Okay, great. So for someone like myself who lives with OA, would you recommend that someone get it measured to see if they need more vitamin K in their diet or possibly vitamin K supplements?
Well, right now, since we don't have enough data to really be convinced that supplementing vitamin K is a benefit, and that's what our trial, is going to do, I don't think that there's good evidence that measuring vitamin K would really be helpful. My recommendation would be to make sure that you're looking at your diet and that you have a healthy diet with plenty of green leafy vegetables and you're taking in proper amounts of vitamin K in your diet. Because overall, nutritionists believe that, rather than just taking a supplement, that a diet that's more complete is really the best way to go. So that would be my recommendation.
Great. Wonderful. Okay, it looks like
Question about Coumadin. Yes, this is
yes,
a really important question because of these studies that have come out. And it is important to talk to your doctor because there are some conditions where the alternative anticoagulants can't be used. They're not as effective. So there are certain conditions where you have to use warfarin or Coumadin, and others where you could be switched to one of the other anticoagulants. So I think that's an important topic that you would have to talk to your doctor about before making any changes.
Mhm. Mhm. Great. And just thinking about all the people I know in my life who take warfarin or Coumadin, I am going to have a conversation with them after this talk for sure. So thank you so much. Any other questions? Please go ahead and type them in the chat. We're coming to the close of our session today. I just wanted to thank you again, Dr. Loeser. It's been wonderful having you here. And thank you to everyone who's attended this presentation. In a minute, we're going to launch a brief satisfaction poll. So please take a minute, actually just a few seconds to respond to that. Oh, and it looks like we've got another question that came in. Could it be that vitamin K is just a part of antioxidant system, anti-ferritopsis? I don't know if I'm saying that right. Where fully reduced forms of vitamin K like menaquinone confers a strong anti-ferrotopic function.
Yeah, so that would be independent of its role in producing vitamin K dependent proteins. So there's less data or less good data about vitamin K potentially having some antioxidant and other functions. I think it's possible, but I think the major knowledge we have right now is on its ability to produce vitamin K dependent proteins. And just to follow up real quickly about the talking to your doctor, could be a little challenging because I imagine most physicians are not familiar with these studies that have been published on risk of progression of OA on warfarin. So that's something to keep in mind when you talk to your doctor. Don't be surprised because I think it hasn't received as much attention as it should have, and so they may not know about these studies.
Okay, interesting. Great. Well, hopefully through the recording of this presentation and all the references that you have provided, we can maybe help educate some of those providers.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I think the conversation can go both ways in the exam room for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Loeser. I really appreciate it. And again, please take a few minutes, everyone, to just complete that poll. And I hope you'll join us on August 21st for our next Lunch and Learn. It is titled Disparities in Hip and Knee OA Management, Exploring the Evidence, featuring Ernest Vina. And I have included the link to that Lunch and Learn in the chat as well. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of the month of July. Hope to see you in August.
Okay, thanks.
Uh-huh.